Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Despite a tragic finish for Atlanta FaZe back at Major 5 in Toronto, they've revealed they still believe themselves to be the best team in the game and the favourites going into the World Championship. aBeZy even says this is the most confidence he has felt for champs since Cold War, when they had by far the best team in the game. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into. First of all, this one here from Phil Spencer, Xbox, Microsoft type guy, basically saying they are still committed in the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. We know that the UK regulators said no, you're not going to do that, and they are probably going to try and find a way through it. I doubt he was ever going to say no, we're going to give up on it, because you know the implications for the stock price and all that would be pretty bad for the shareholders, but still he's making the commitment that they're going to try and work through these issues, and you'd imagine that they might be successful over the coming months. So we'll see. It's still a long lead time of what's happening, but it just seems to me that with all this dragging on, Activision Blizzard are doing everything they can to appear as pretty as they can in the shop window, let's just say, right? They're signing all the deals, every single extra penny of revenue that Activision Blizzard can bring in right now to try and make themselves, you know, like to make the deal with Microsoft more lucrative, let's just say, they're going to try and do it. It might be one of the reasons behind why they're trying to sign this YouTube deal, despite the teams not agreeing, is because maybe they get a bit more revenue, makes them look better, they can get more money from Microsoft in the purchase price, all this type of stuff. I imagine it helps around times like this. For those that stand to benefit from this, of course, quick couple of things on Rostermania, actually. This was one thing on Hicksy, just looking at his overall S&D KD of the season, but of course, that doesn't tell the entire story. I think he's generally been better like on LAN than he has been online, and in fairness, he won the first event he ever played in, which is a very rare commodity in Call of Duty history, at least on a pro level, and Scrappy says in the replies, champion, so despite his numbers maybe not looking spectacular, definitely is a champion level player, won back in Major 3 in Texas. Question is to me, what do Toronto do next year if they struggle at champs? Because Scrappy isn't going to be going anywhere. He likes this organization, I imagine he wants to stay around. That makes perfect sense. CleanX has been great. I don't think he's going to be going anywhere. To me, it's Insight and Hicksy have been the two players that have been definitely up and down. Insight, surprisingly so, I would say, because he's been so consistent over the last couple of years that he hasn't really quite been there, and especially even his Search and Destroy hasn't exactly been spectacular. Their Game 5 record lately has been pretty bad, where usually Insight turns up. So I'd expect Insight to turn up a little bit more coming into the World Championship, but let's say they get like top 4. I mean, I was mentioning the other day how many teams are going to change after this event. I would say 10 or 11 probably, but if Toronto come top 4, like what will they do? Because obviously Scrappy rates Hicksy very highly. They play with each other in challenges. He doesn't want Standy back, right? So I imagine that he likes Hicksy and wants to keep him around, and they did win an event back at Major 3. But still, if it doesn't work at champs and Scrappy likes Hicksy and CleanX is too good to get rid of, like what do? Do they trade out Insight? But do they think, well, we can't really upgrade from Insight? So, because a lot of teams really rate Insight. I mean, last year FaZe wanted Insight, right? We believe in the off-season before Toronto said, no, that ain't happening. We're keeping him around. So maybe it's possible that Toronto, even if they have a poor event here, they still stick for next year, but it just depends on those internal relations and also what the coaches think about the matter. There's also this from Zinni, Tempen Theory, or TJ Tempen Theory, discussing business at the sold-out T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, because of course they are the Vegas team. I imagine a lot of those guys will be there for the World Championship, maybe discussing what they might do next year, because you would think that Theory will stay around as the coach for that team. Donnie Temp is, you know, obviously he's been one of the best players for Vegas this year. These were the numbers throughout the entirety of Major 5. What do Vegas do next year, right? My question is, will Clay get kind of poached somewhere else? Yes, his numbers look pretty ugly here, but it's possible that Clay either gets poached somewhere because someone wants him to coach, which is very possible, or another team like a Boston or something, or even a Seattle want Clayster to build their project around. That's possible. Even, you know, the likes of Temp, Standy, and TJ, I think all of those guys, it's possible that a team better than Vegas feel like any of those players can upgrade their roster. So I think it's possible, first of all, that all of these guys, or at least some of these guys, get brought up to another team, or at least conversations are being had along those lines. I'd expect maybe, what, 2 of these 4 players to stay there for next year. Maybe Temp and TJ, I could see them sticking it out on this roster, and, you know, maybe Standy as well, who knows on that one. But, yeah, interesting story for Vegas, because they got quite close. They are, to me, the 8th best team in the game right now, but unfortunately they're not at champs because they didn't do well enough at the start of the season, and Surge are there instead. But I think it's quite difficult to predict what a lot of those bottom tier teams are going to do, and Vegas, of course, not making champs, especially in that conversation. The reigning champions from last year, though, the Los Angeles Thieves, they're going in for the back-to-back. No one's ever done that. Like, there's barely any teams that have ever got particularly close to doing so, and they played Toronto round 1, far from an easy game, and if they win that, they play the winner of FaZe and Surge, and on current form, you'd say that's probably going to be the Atlanta FaZe. Cellium's been on FaZe at every single World Championship he's attended. That was the case in Black Ops 4 when they got top 16, but ever since then, second, first, seconds, since the CDL era has come into effect on Atlanta FaZe. It was FaZe Clan, of course, back in Black Ops 4 when they got ultra reverse swept by 100 Thieves that went on to make the run all the way to the grand finals. But Atlanta FaZe came up with their phenomenal Perception episode. Perception always like throws me off because it's literally vision, right, that OpTic used to do, and they've put it into a thesaurus and they've come up with Perception, which always makes me laugh, really. But nonetheless, the quality of this episode was fantastic, running down all the matches they played, all the behind the scenes stuff, which is just my favorite part of these episodes. But towards the end, after they lost to Subliners in tragic fashion for those guys, absolutely right, they will for sure feel, and they do feel, as we'll see in a second, they should have won that series. They just needed to win one search, close out a 5-2 on iLLeY, and they would have been fine. But at this moment, for example, right, when Cellium doesn't see Priester, that there kind of decided their fate to a certain extent. But I'll share especially what aBeZy and Slasher have to say on the confidence they have going into the World Championship, which is pretty much as high as it's ever been.
I think right now we are the best team.
I do think, listen, New York played lights out. I think FaZe was the best team in Toronto. I think FaZe losing 3 S&Ds was insane. You got to tip the clutch ability in the plays from New York, but I think FaZe was the best team in Toronto.
This is where I want to be.
Are you kidding me?
Subliners, shoulder to shoulder. aBeZy! Can't get it done!
I feel like that series could have gone either way. There's a lot of like unfortunate situations that happened, like with me not seeing the guy bottom pool and the silo, which could have changed the whole tournament for us.
I mean, now that we're back, I mean, we got like, what, a week and a half to prepare for champs. I think we're pretty prepared as it is. I think it's just building on what we already have, making sure we stay in that like kind of mode, because I think right now we are the best team.
I've honestly never been more confident going into a champs like this and probably Cold War. I was super confident. This event, I feel like I'm a lot more confident than I was going into champs last year, because I feel like we have all the right things clicking at the right time right now. So I think if we can play how we were playing in Major 5 and kind of like rolled over into champs, I really think we're in a good spot to win.
And yeah, it's just about, you know, being ready for the big one. That's the only one that matters, and that's what we're here to win.
So we know how good aBeZy is right now. If he's not the best player in the game, he's pretty damn close. Hydra probably is going to win the MVP with 2 event victories, but aBeZy was, to me, the favourite up until that grand finals, to be honest, when Hydra probably has just about stolen the show. It'll get announced around the champs time as well by the league. Now, Slasher, I wonder when, because he won his World Championship back in Black Ops 3, I wonder if he was even as confident then, given the fact that the OpTic dynasty existed at the time, as he is now with this FaZe team, when he really is going in with a great shout. Maybe he was more confident in an event like World War II champs where Rise were looking pretty good, but still, the last few years for aBeZy and Simp, for example, they went into MW champs probably feeling like that they had a decent chance, but they lost to Dallas in the end. Cold War, they were the best team the entire year. From the start to finish, they were the best. They got top 5 or top 8, sorry, at Major 5 because it was Classic, right, who's actually now the substitute for FaZe, who knocked them out. Nicky D knocked them out on that with that Seattle Surge team. They came top 8, but even then, I imagine going into champs, they were highly confident, because if you win absolutely everything, they'd have probably been even more confident. But still, even as it was, winning 3 events, then getting top 8, other teams think, oh, they might have fallen off a little bit. They were still highly confident they were going to win, because their practice that year, FaZe was like their numbers in their scrims is just absurd. I know that Mack has the numbers somewhere in terms of like how many maps they won compared to maps lost. They won like 80% of their maps in scrims. I mean, it was just, they didn't lose a scrim set. Maybe they lost like 1 scrim set to a team all year in practice. Like, their team was absurd that year. Next year, they were pretty good, but look at all these second places, right? That is still tragic for, I'm sure, for many FaZe fans. Arcitys got dropped as a result. And even then, going into the World Championship last year, as aBeZy says, they weren't like ultra confident last season. They were feeling okay, but they weren't super confident. Whereas this year, they're much more confident than they were even last year, which just goes to show, because their results this year have been highly consistent, but a little bit more more like up and down than usual, right? 3 third places is quite rare for FaZe. Usually it's just all grand finals, or sometimes they get bopped out top 8, which can happen. Second at Major 5 though, event they feel like I mentioned they probably should have won, and that's why they're super confident. So they feel like it seems they're a better team than the subliners. They feel like they would have won that series 7 out of 10 times, 6 out of 10 times if it was played over and over again in parallel universes, let's say. But it is interesting for Slasher to straight up say that he does feel like they're the best team in the game, and also for aBeZy to say, yeah, this is the most confident he's pretty much ever been. Maybe, I mean, at least in the CDL era, maybe in Black Ops 4, United felt very confident after winning the event in Miami, the playoffs, and then going into champs a couple of weeks later. I imagine they were highly confident then, but still, aBeZy, despite having only won 1 of 5 events this year, is maximum confidence, which shows that their practice is very good, shows their prep has been very good, and is a pretty scary sign, it must be said, for those in the rest of the league. And even as Method says himself, right, he reckons they're still the team to beat right now, and by the bookies odds, they are probably still the favourites. Do wonder though what could happen here, because we know there's been some good beef between FaZe and Thieves. Thieves are going into this tournament in a weird spot because they're far from the favourites. Like last year they were the favourites. They won Major 4, and this year it's a different story. They had their event at Major 4 again that they won, but this year there was another major cycle where they didn't really turn up online, or to be honest, that much on LAN. They were okay on LAN, but eventually they go down. And I would love to see again a Thieves versus FaZe battle at champs, because we know that Drazah's got something special in store for those guys if it is the case. Hopefully it happens, right? And it could well happen if FaZe beat Surge and if Thieves beat the Toronto guys, which is that maybe they're not favourites to do, but it's definitely possible. Then hopefully we get a FaZe versus Thieves rematch here, because I mean it was the World Championship last year, the grand final there, all the drama kicked off with Drazah throwing up the birds, the words that happened after the fact from Simp on Twitter. I'm hoping for more of that, to be honest. So we better get a FaZe versus Thieves matchup at some point in this tournament at least. That's what I'm hoping for. But on plenty of the top teams, there aren't that many rookies, right? Of the 5 teams that have, I believe, a good chance to win this event, the likes of OpTic, Subliners, FaZe, Thieves, and Toronto, there's only a couple of rookies in there. There's Hicksy on Toronto, there's Ghosty on OpTic, and that's pretty much the end of the list. There's actually only ever been 10 rookies that have made the grand finals of champs, which is kind of incredible, right? We've been around for 10 years now in COD champs, and there's only ever been 10 rookies that were in their first season. So Miracles back in 2013, then Study, and then also Aqua, Remy, and Nuggafen on that Team Revenge squad in 2015, Pharaoh 2018, rest in peace, Insight in 2021, and then we have the era of Shotzzy and iLLeY on the Dallas Empire team that was online, and then Simp in 2019. But it's pretty rare to even make a champs grand final as a rookie. It hasn't happened much at all since 2015. So it's definitely possible for Ghosty and Hicksy, maybe even others, to make a final here, but you know, winning it will be an entirely different story. And just one final thing to close out here. I don't know if this is like another Sam Phoenix classic tweet that he does, or whether this is almost a goodbye of sorts. It's kind of interesting in a way. Honestly, cannot express how proud I am of Sib this season. I've coached him for 3 of the last 4 years. He's competed at the 18+ level, watched him grow and develop into an absolutely amazing player and an amazing person. Through all of his ups and downs and the constant criticism, he has persevered and become one of the best ARs in the game right now, which is true at the start of the season. The last couple of stages, I'm not so convinced about that one. Sky's the limit for Dante. I can't wait to see him grow more as time goes on. So, you know, it's an interesting tweet for sure, right? Is this saying, oh, you know, I can't wait to continue to work with him on Seattle Surge for the coming years? Or is this kind of like a, this is the last hurrah, Dante's going to leave after champs and go to another team, which is definitely possible as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting one, right? Just because Surge are, I'm sure, already preparing their roster changes, right? Despite the fact that they're not actually out of the tournament quite yet. But very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.